Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook for October 21st, 2025. Today, we are going over newly formed Tropical Storm Melissa, which formed earlier this morning at 11 o'clock and is looking like it'll be a hurricane threat for the northern Caribbean islands. This has been brewing for several days, but it looks like it is all coming together and looking more and more official, and this will be something that we need to watch very closely. And not only will it be a hurricane threat, but it'll generally be a very impactful rain event for the Northern Caribbean as well. Lots to go over today, so let's get started with the National Hurricane Center homepage. Obviously, going over the latest advisory with Melissa, newly formed Melissa, 13 named storm of the hurricane season in the Atlantic. Maximum sustained winds right now, 50 miles per hour. Minimum central pressure 1,003 millibars, located at 14.2 north and 73.0 west, moving west at 15 miles per hour. Really quickly, in the Eastern Pacific, there is another area of interest here that we're going to have to watch. This might become a named storm once again. Maybe might be a hurricane. Not entirely sure, but looks like there is something else to monitor in the Eastern Pacific. Although, by the looks of it, it'll probably stay well away from the Mexican coastline, so we won't have to worry about direct impacts with this storm, which is obviously a very good thing. All of our attention, though, right now is definitely invested, especially in Melissa, since this will more than likely be an impactful storm for somebody. Who, though, exactly is still very much up in the air, but it really ranges anywhere from the islands of Hispaniola, so Haiti and the DR, to Jamaica, and even Cuba. And that reminds me, I know somebody in Jamaica, so I'm gonna have to ask them about how things are right now. But you get it. In general, the Northern Caribbean is very much in play for Melissa. But it's not just going to be the fact that we're going to talk about a potential hurricane, and honestly, maybe even a strong hurricane. It'll also be the rainfall too, and that's one thing I actually will point out before we talk about how Melissa is doing specifically. Look at all the convective activity that is going on the northern fringes of Melissa, already bringing rainfall probably to the northern Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and even already some rainfall to the DR right now. And there's even some thunderstorms here firing over the island of Jamaica, although I'm pretty sure that probably is, typical thunderstorms that happen. But it's all going to be probably even more significant with Melissa here, which, as of this afternoon, is officially a tropical storm now. Definitely looks more organized than it did yesterday, although still not the most organized storm yet. This still is dealing with a little bit of southwesterly shear, so its low-level center and mid-level center is still kind of misaligned right now, so we're not seeing rapid intensification occur just yet, but definitely seeing a lot of convective activity blow up, especially all being weighted to the eastern side right now. And that too is also bringing a lot of heavy rain to the ABC Islands and also the northern coast of Venezuela and South America. It's in general, the entire Caribbean is going to experience a lot of heavy rainfall with Melissa, but this could potentially become a pretty strong storm, especially depending on what it does with its track. And as I mentioned yesterday, its track will also really depend on how quickly it is able to organize and stack up with its low and mid-level centers, which will impact whether or not it takes a quick turn to the north and ends up probably making a direct landfall in the island of Hispaniola, or whether or not, it might take a little bit more time to organize, but that might cause it to dilly-dally in the Caribbean. And not only will that bring heavy rainfall, but as I've mentioned before, the sea surface temperatures in the Caribbean are very, very, very warm, virtually untapped for the entire year. So this is definitely potentially a pretty big storm in the making. Recon is in Melissa right now. They're giving us the latest information on what is going on, and just refreshing to, just so we can see what the latest map here from the Recon is. And it looks like they are investigating where the center of the storm is right now, and at least looking at the latest recon pass, it looks like the center is kind of somewhere to the west here, and all the convective cloud activities kind of back here to the east. So definitely still dealing with shear to be expected. Going to take some time to organize over the next several days. And also, now let's shift towards the National Hurricane Center cone here. Will also move very slowly, so that'll also play quite a role with the rainfall. And there are also hurricane watches and tropical storm watches in effect right now. Although honestly, given how this track kind of um, fares out here, looks like the National Hurricane Center themselves are not also sold on the idea that maybe that the GFS is showing, maybe with this very rapidly coming together and then taking a dive into the island of Hispaniola here. They show this pretty much entirely stalled out in the Central Caribbean over the next 5 days, and then eventually, as this slowly comes together, this strengthens into a hurricane. And obviously, because of that, there are hurricane watches for Haiti right now. There are also tropical storm watches for Jamaica. Although, once again, judging by the way the track goes, and I'll show you with some of the model scenarios, especially if this does what looks like the National Hurricane Center is leaning into, I probably will not be surprised if eventually down the line we end up getting a hurricane watch or warning of some sort in the island of Jamaica as well, and probably for Cuba too. It really is the main islands of Haiti, DR, Jamaica, and Cuba all need to be watching this storm very, very closely. And let's really quickly actually go over what the current watches and warnings are right now. And as I've said again, tropical storm watch in effect for Jamaica, and hurricane watch in effect right now for southwestern peninsula of Haiti from the border of the DR to Port-au-Prince. And I'm pretty sure as the days goes on, we will probably add a lot more watches and warnings for the storm right now. So with that being said, let's dive right into the potential tracks, because that, I think, is really going to be the biggest thing that we're going to have to watch, because it's going to impact everything. It's going to, in my opinion, impact intensity and also, the potential for rainfall here in the Northern Caribbean. And as I've said before, especially if this leans more into what, for instance, the Euro shows today. And I think the Euro has, always leaned more into the scenario where we end up getting Melissa to kind of stall out in the Northern Caribbean, and then eventually, as the ridge builds back here over the southwestern Atlantic, begins to dilly-dally and then slowly head towards the west in the Caribbean. This might get very strong, and in fact, you actually see a lot of these ensemble members here with the European, especially in the Western Caribbean. They get very strong. You even see, I saw one of these ensembles here, 910s, 920s. That definitely is probably at least category 4 intensity, although don't want to get too much in depth with the potential intensity of this. Although if we actually do search here, I will tell you, let's go to the discussion, because that's where they have the actual intensity. Up to 85 miles per hour is the latest intensity from the National Hurricane Center right now. So they forecast category 1, but there is a lot of uncertainty with the track and intensity. But I will say, especially if this heads into the Western Caribbean, there's a lot of potential. And the Western Caribbean is the warmest part of the Caribbean basin, so we're going to have to watch very closely, especially if the Euro pans out. What about the Google AI ensemble members? They too also have a lot of very strong ensemble members here, a little bit more concentrated in the Central Caribbean, but generally the same idea as the European, where this kind of stalls out in the Central Caribbean for a few days and then eventually starts heading off to the west, intensifies quite a bit. And we have quite a few very strong ensembles here, and that's probably a very, very major hurricane threat for Jamaica and Cuba, and even as well, probably the southeastern Bahamas. And why is this all? And let's actually, really quickly, before I move on, let me show you what the GFS shows too. versus the GFS on the other hand, they show still, and I'm, kind of doubting because I've also seen that the GFS has begun to shift a little bit further to the southwest. The GFS is still showing the scenario where this comes together pretty quickly, already beginning to rapidly intensify by the time we get to Thursday. And then eventually this makes a very hard turn to the northeast, dives right into the island of Hispaniola, and then this stalls just north of the island of Hispaniola and obviously brings lots and lots of heavy rainfall, and that'll definitely be a huge disaster. And then eventually, this kicks itself on off to the northeast and interacts with whatever trough might be in the open Atlantic, and then this moves on out of here by the time we get to the early part of next week. So there's clearly a huge divergence in the track, and the National Hurricane Center actually mentions it in its forecast discussion, which I just showed you to show you the intensity. And that's why we are stuck with the Hurricane Center forecast here with pretty much, if you look at the forecast, especially the outer ring here, which represents the forecast cone for 4 and 5 days out, you pretty much have one big circle, almost if like this was an ice cream cone, but probably a very short one, and that just represents all kinds of uncertainty that is shaping up here in the Caribbean, and this is going to be a very very long storm to track. Although I'm leaning, especially given by the National Hurricane Center forecast track, they definitely don't show what the GFS shows. So I'm beginning to lean more towards the scenario that this is probably going to stall in the Caribbean for several days, and that's especially going to be even more problematic. Why? Because, as I've been pointing out to you for pretty much, honestly, I think probably since the beginning of the month, if not beforehand, look at how warm the Caribbean is. This is the current sea surface temperature anomaly map for the Caribbean, and I also have the Atlantic as a whole. Maybe I'll show you that in a little bit, but let's first show you the Caribbean. Uh, Very, very warm sea surface temperature anomalies. Almost the entire Caribbean, at least a degree Celsius above normal. Even some pockets here, especially in the central Caribbean. Look at that. Look at how that just, very, very neatly lines up, especially in the central Caribbean here. You see some areas even getting as high as 2 degrees Celsius, a full 2 degrees Celsius above normal. And that is very, very warm. And then just take a look at the warmth that we have here in the Gulf too. And this warmth here in the Gulf is very interesting. I'm actually curious to see how this will play out for winter and spring, although that's a completely separate topic. Although this is especially why, this is very important. And the warmth that we see here in both the Caribbean and Gulf is, again, because of the fact that we've pretty much had nothing in either the Caribbean or Gulf this entire season. So we've just been able to build up the warmth so much. So this is going to be stalled out in the Caribbean over the next several days. And I should also mention to you that there will be a lot of extra moisture because of the amount of heat in the ocean, and that's only going to fuel even further the rainfall threat, especially for Hispaniola, like Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Jamaica and Cuba, and honestly, even the Bahamas as well. And we'll probably see a continued rainfall threat throughout portions of the northern South American coastline. Combined, obviously, all of that, and makes sense why this is all happening. Looking at the bigger picture, especially in the Pacific, very, very cold sea surface temperature anomalies along the equatorial Pacific. So we have a La Nina in place. So usually when we have La Nina and a very cold or warm Caribbean, especially in the month of October, we get very, very favorable conditions. And I think that's going to manifest here in the Caribbean with Melissa, and it's already beginning to do so. And obviously the biggest part that I've said before, rainfall going to be a very, very big issue, and I want to stress that as much as possible. And I really can't stress it enough. And we've talked quite a bit this season, honestly. I've mentioned a lot about rainfall being a huge issue, and it catches always a lot of people off guard, and rainfall especially. for Haiti and the Dominican Republic. The island of Hispaniola has a very, very, very mountainous terrain, and that can lead to all kinds of disasters, especially with mudslides. And look at the rainfall totals that are expected here from Melissa, and this is over the next, I'm not sure, is this for the next 7 days or just the next day or so? I'm not even sure. But look at the rainfall totals here. As much as a foot for portions of southern Haiti and the southern DR, and for most of the DR, as much as up to half a foot, and the rainfall threat eventually expands further into the Caribbean. And I think this probably goes out to October 25th, so this probably goes out to the next 4 days. If we widen that forecast period out to the next 7 days, I'm pretty sure you'll start to see Cuba and Jamaica enveloped in this rainfall threat too. And that is also another very, very big factor besides whatever potential hurricane threat that we might have out of Melissa here over the next several weeks. So lots of moving parts to watch here. And things are going to start getting very, very busy in terms of tracking. We're going to start, we're obviously going to continue doing these videos throughout this entire week. And eventually, as things continue to heat up with Melissa, I might even start posting multiple times a week. It just looks like that kind of storm. And I mean, I've said even a few days before as it was moving through the islands, it just looked like a storm that was going to develop. And officially now we have it today, Tropical Storm Melissa. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have a long, long week ahead of us. But you can stay on top of the tropics. You don't have to worry, especially if you are following me, because once again, I'll be doing these videos every single day. And if you want to stay tuned for that, please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. And I say that because I've seen that we've gotten a few subscribers over the last several days, and I've also seen quite an uptick in views, and I thank you all for that. And I hope that continues, and not just for my sanity, but also for the sanity of you getting information that I'm pretty sure all of you will need, or I'm pretty sure somebody will definitely want and need this information, especially if you know people in the Caribbean, like the DR or Jamaica, and I'm pretty sure especially there are a lot of people that are watching my channel. I know I get a lot of comments from people living in the Caribbean. So if you are living in those areas and you find this information useful, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also share with family and friends. Help get the word out. We're going to be watching things, and we're going to be spending a lot of time watching and tracking here coming up over the next week. So I hope you will join me in doing so and bearing with me throughout this next week. With that being said, I'm going to end it off for today's video. Hope you enjoyed what you saw today. And with that being said, make sure to enjoy the rest of your day and evening. Stay safe. And as always, I'll be back with more tomorrow. And make sure to follow me on Twitter too, @Danilo Evangelista, so you can get updates there as well throughout the day. Not just, one video like I'm doing now. So make sure to follow me on Twitter. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a great night.